Right before the start of last season, around the time that I actually started this channel, I came out with my preseason awards for the Bulls and predictions for the year, and with Media Day starting tomorrow, yes, I cannot believe that Media Day is actually already here, and then with training camp starting on Tuesday, I figured what better time than to discuss my awards and predictions for the Bulls this season, and that's what I'll be going over in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I know some of you have been asking for my Eastern Conference predictions from top to bottom, and I will do a video on that as well, but I really wanted to wait until most of the teams around the league have been finalized, especially when you have matters like Ben Simmons and his future still up in the air, which will impact where the Sixers could potentially fall in the East, and even for other teams, including the Bulls, rosters won't be finalized until after the preseason when final roster spots are announced. So for the Bulls, they did have a number of training camp invites, however, not all of the players will actually be making the team. So until everything is final in the days leading up to the start of the regular season, I will hold off on my Eastern Conference predictions. Although, if you've been following my channel, you know my stance on where I think the Bulls will ultimately finish in the Eastern Conference. But with that being said, let's get into some of these hypothetical awards that I started last season for the Bulls roster. And let's start with who will be the Bulls MVP. Now, last season, this one award was pretty easy for the most part in terms of predicting, as we all knew Zach Levine was going to be the Bulls' best player. We knew that he was going to be the #1 option on any given night, and of course Levine did in fact prove to be the most valuable player last season for the Bulls. This season though, with the additions of DeRozan and Lonzo in free agency, and even adding Vucevic at the trade deadline, he's going to have a little more competition in terms of who will be the Bulls' most valuable player. And although I do think a guy like DeRozan will be critical for the Bulls and their overall success because of the experience and better leadership that he will bring, I still think at the end of the day, Levine is going to be the Bulls' best player and will be the Bulls' MVP for the season, even if it means that his overall production dips slightly because of the added talent on the roster. He's still going to be the most valuable player for the team. Next, how about the Bulls' most improved player awards? So what's funny is that I actually had Daniel Gafford as the Bulls' most improved player from the prior season. And of course, we all know what happened. Gafford struggled to start the season, was then traded, and actually kind of balled out on the Wizards after getting traded, which I guess in a weird way ended up being an accurate prediction. But for this season, we've got a ton of guys that are expected to make big jumps from their performance last year. But if I had to go with a player that I think will make the biggest improvement on the roster, I'm going to go with Lonzo Ball. Now, I know most people would probably take Patrick Williams because there are a lot of expectations of him to make that leap from his rookie to sophomore season, especially with how high he was drafted. But I think because of the other 4 guys in the starting lineup, Patrick Williams likely won't be highlighted as much for his performance and get as many touches on the offensive end that I think will somewhat slow down his growth a little. I do think that he will have an improved year, but I don't think that he'll make the kind of jump we will see from someone like Lonzo Ball compared to last season. And the reason I say that is because Lonzo, for the first time, is going to be an environment in which he'll be given the keys to run the offense. He's likely going to be the primary ball handler on most possessions, and unlike last season in which he played more of a 2-guard and a 3-and-D type role, he's going to have 3 elite scorers to facilitate the ball to give him much more assist opportunities than he has in his career. And unlike on the Pelicans, in which he did still have 2 great scorers in Zion and Brandon Ingram, Lonzo has Levine and Vucevic who can help spread the floor and knock down threes to give him opportunity to drive to the paint and score. And not only that, because there are going to be so many scoring threats, it's going to allow Lonzo to get more open looks than he got last season shooting from outside when he's playing off the ball. So this is going to be a big year for Lonzo going into his 5th season in the league. He's going to be 24. He's about to enter his prime. This is the season for him to make that true leap and show to the world that he's worth the hype that was expected of him coming into the league. That is what I hope anyway, because you guys know me, I still have my hesitations around Lonzo, and for him to really wow me and not be as skeptical as I have been, he's going to need to make a big improvement this season from last year, even though he still had a great season with the Pelicans. Then we've got the Sixth Man of the Year award, which this will be an interesting one because I think the standard prediction for this would be Coby White, given that he's going to be the primary scorer in the second unit. And let's not forget, Coby White is still a really good basketball player and can be a critical piece in leading that second unit. However, I think because Coby is likely going to miss the start of the season, and because Alex Caruso is going to be that lead in the interim while Coby is out, and because Caruso is the type of player that will do whatever is asked of him, whether it be a hustle defender, a playmaker, or scorer, he's going to be that main guy coming off the bench that the Bulls are going to be looking to on both ends of the floor. And for that reason, I think Caruso will be the Bulls' Sixth Man of the Year. Then, of course, we have Defensive Player of the Year for the Bulls. I mean, I really think this is going to be a toss-up between Caruso and Patrick Williams, but ultimately I think Patrick Williams will end up being the Bulls' best defender, and mainly because he's going to be having to be relied upon so much in the starting lineup for guarding the opposing team's best player, similar to what we saw last year. And because the Bulls are going to have such a strong offensive starting lineup, Patrick Williams is going to be tasked to focus most of his effort on the defensive end, which will be more so than any other player on the court. And again, Patrick Williams was already a solid defender as a 19-year-old rookie that I expect him to get even better on that end in his sophomore season. Obviously, we all know now that Patrick Williams suffered a severe ankle injury and will be sidelined for 4 to 6 weeks, but it sounds like it's not really going to impact that much of his time within the regular season. We're talking about a max of missing the first week in the regular season. Then we have Rookie of the Year for the Bulls, and of course this one is only between two players, Ayo Dosunmu and Marko Simonovic, and this one might surprise you, but I actually think between these two, Marko will prove to have a better rookie season. It doesn't mean that I think that Marko is a better player than Ayo, because I actually think Ayo is a better player than Marko Simonovic overall and will ultimately have a better career than Marko will and be a more impactful player for the Bulls in the upcoming years. But because Marko is one of the few big men on the Bulls roster, and with the limited front court depth that the Bulls have, you'll likely see Marko getting more run on the court with more minutes, and with that comes more exposure and better production, as opposed to Ayo, who is going to be competing for minutes against guys like Caruso and Coby White. That's very possible that Ayo won't even be in the rotation and see very limited minutes in his rookie season, at least when Coby White comes back, making it harder for him to showcase what he can do and not have as impactful of a season as Simonovic. Obviously, the remaining award is Coach of the Year, which there's only one coach competing for this hypothetical award that I have made specifically for the Bulls, so with that, that's going to go to Billy Donovan. Now, as it relates to the actual awards that the NBA gives out across the league at the end of every regular season, I personally think the Bulls will at least get some votes or recognition for some of these. Obviously, it all comes down to how the Bulls are going to perform as a team when it comes to certain players getting votes for MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, or even Sixth Man of the Year. But based on my prediction and my expectation that the Bulls will finish the season with the 5th seed in the East, I personally think that that's enough of a leap from last year in terms of the Bulls' improved play that Zach Levine, as long as he still proves to be the #1 option and best player on the Bulls, that he could receive some votes for MVP consideration. I don't think it'll be as many as people are probably thinking, and I don't think that he'll finish top 5 in voting for MVP, but he might get a handful of 5th place votes if the Bulls finish as the 5th seed. I also do think it's possible that someone like Alex Caruso, or even someone like Coby White, if he just starts to ball out in the second unit, that they could potentially get some votes for Sixth Man of the Year award. I do think that Patrick Williams and Caruso will get some votes for all defensive team members, but I think it's unlikely either player will get any votes for Defensive Player of the Year. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I do also think that Lonzo Ball could get some votes for Most Improved Player consideration if he can do all the things I mentioned, and why I think he'll be the Bulls' Most Improved Player. I don't expect either Ayo or Marko to get any votes or consideration for Rookie of the Year, just because they're not going to get enough playing time to even be able to compete with a competitive rookie class for this upcoming year. I would even say it's unlikely either of them will even get all rookie team considerations. And then finally, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Billy Donovan did actually receive a handful of votes for Coach of the Year. Again, this is assuming the Bulls finish 5th in the East and fulfill my prediction for the team. As far as other general predictions for this season, I do think Zach Levine will make his first All-NBA selection, like an All-NBA third team. Really, he should have been selected as an All-NBA player last year when you look at some of the players who were selected over him, but it is what it is. I mentioned this before, but I do expect that the Bulls will actually be a top 10 defensive team in the league, despite the media thinking that they're going to be one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. And I do expect the Bulls to be one of the best passing teams in the league, not just because they added Lonzo and DeMar, who are some of the better passers in the NBA, but we also forget that Vucevic is a very highly skilled passing big man, and Levine is actually a decent playmaker as well when he wants to be. The guy nearly averaged 5 assists per game last season. So I fully expect that this Bulls team, that they will be one of the better passing teams in the league, both in the half court and in transition. And then finally, and I honestly think that this might not even be that crazy of a prediction, but I predict that the dunk of the year across the NBA will be from a Chicago Bulls player, whether that be Zach Levine, DeMar DeRozan, or Derrick Jones Jr. Hell, even Alex Caruso has had some incredible dunks throughout his career, so you never know, maybe Caruso will get it as well. This is obviously going to be one of the more exciting and highlight reel level teams in the league, and I, for one, cannot wait to see what this team is going to look like when they start playing in action with less than a month away from the regular season. Don't forget, Media Day is tomorrow, as well as training camp this week. I'll have updates and overviews for each day at camp, including interviews with Bulls insiders, so be on the lookout for that. As always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.